Welcome back. You're watching this Check. We are live from Broadcasting House. We have spent the last one hour actually discussing issues around business succession management as well as restructuring. Time now to shift gears and talk about food security in this country and of course food policies. If I can give you a backgrounder, last week the Drought Management Authority issued a statement saying that almost 2 million Kenyans are facing starvation, and there are serious interventions that are needed both by the private sector as well as the public sector to try and ameliorate this problem. And one of them was upscaling the distribution of the issue of cash transfer as well as streamlining distribution of food. And the question is this is not something new. We have lived in this country knowing that at any given moment, a number of almost 1.5 million people are always in need of food. And the question is, how do we ensure that we deal with this problem once and for all? A number of initiatives have been have already started, and the question is this: how do we accelerate them? Joining us with this conversation is Ebenezer Amadi. He's a program manager, sustainable. He's a program manager, sustainable inclusive business, which is a component at KBC that deals with ensuring there is a sustainability in business and, of course, the circular economy. Thank you very much indeed, Ebenezer, for finding time to be with us. I mean, so we are in the year 2021 and we're still talking about 2 million Kenyans, facing starvation. I mean, this is absolutely wrong, right?
True. That's actually a sad state for the country to be in. And of course, Kenya is a water-scarce country, and that also contributes to food security. And when we talk about food security, there are different components that we'll be able to look at. One is accessibility, the other thing is affordability, and the third thing is nutrition. So all these components then contribute to food security. So when you talk about having a food secure nation, then you have to ensure that the population has the ability to access the food, and by access it has also two components. If from the financial side again, because again you having the ability to purchase food or purchase grain for you to plant then also contributes to a food secure country in that context. Nutrition is also key. That's why we always talk about FNS, food nutrition security, where a population does not have a great mix of nutrition in the food that they have. We also consider a country not being food secure.
Mm-hmm. In this country for the longest time we've been talking about mechanization of agriculture, and we know as part of the Big Four agenda, food security and nutrition is part and parcel of government big agenda, to ensure that Kenyans do not only have access to food, but they have access to food that is nutritional. How comes we have never gotten it right? I mean, it's proper to say that how old we are now as a republic, almost 70 years. How comes we have never gotten it right?
Just to start with, Kenya produces about 40% of its food and imports the rest. So we have a gap for us to be able to reach. And mechanization is one of the ways for us to increase our production and to ensure that we also have enough food for the citizenry. So talking about different projects that the government has been able to implement, there are different initiatives that the government has had, especially looking at irrigation in ASAL areas, for example, so as to be able to have harvesting throughout the year. But then again, these also have to begin at a pilot stage. You conduct some research, look at how then your production is able to increase. So I would say that there has been quite some progress over the years, but of course there's another thing that has kicked in, which is climate change. And that is why people are coming up with initiatives, for example, to irrigate land. And when I started, I also mentioned that Kenya is a water scarce country. So you see that there are a number of components that then contribute to us not being a food secure country. Beginning from water, moving from climate change, and again also financing. Mechanization also requires financing to implement some of the irrigation projects that we have. But some research that has been conducted in different counties shows that there are a number of avenues for us to increase our food production. For example, the other day I was reading a research on using biochar as soil amendments to be able to increase your production. But beyond using fertilizer, biochar as an amendment, you also need to have an environment that is conducive for the plant to grow. And that includes water as well.
Good. I mean, this narrative that Kenya, is a water scarce country, has been talked about, for quite a long time, and there is a section of the population that does not believe in this because, look, we share the second biggest freshwater lake in the world in the name of Lake Victoria. We have the world's biggest desert lake in our borders. I'm talking about Lake Turkana. We have various rivers, that flow into the Indian Ocean. I'm talking about River Tana. We also have a long shoreline of Indian Ocean, and we also receive some favorable amount of rainfall every year, and so the issue has never been that we do not have enough water. And the issue has always been, how do we harness the water that we have? Because we have countries that actually are not as favored as we are in terms of water. And I'm talking about countries like Israel, countries like Egypt, for this matter. So how do we harness, the little that we have and exploit it to our benefit?
Thank you so much for the question. I think just to start with, for the benefit of our viewers, I will start from the context of the definition of a water scarce country. In this context, then we mean it's more or less like the amount, quantity of water we have vis-a-vis the population. And the recommended is about 1,000 cubic meter per capita, and Kenya is about
that is per person per year.
Yeah, per person per year. And Kenya is about at 500. So you see the gap. That is why as you call it, a narrative saying that Kenya is a water scarce country. But just also going beyond that, you talked about Kenya having a freshwater lake. I think 2 years back, I was having fish just close to Lake Victoria. I'd visited Kisumu, and there was a lady and a gentleman who just walked next to the lake, and there was a child, and then the child asked, "Mom, I thought this is a freshwater lake," and because of the hyacinth and the way it looked, and it was a joke but a sad state when the dad looked at the child and said, "Freshwater only means that it doesn't have salt." So I listened to that, and it was funny, but still not so good to hear, because generally that meant that the water that you have is not potable, is not safe for you to drink. And in classification of water, access to water, you'll find that they look at safety and looking at the hierarchy of you getting access to water. You're beginning from a piped house to you walking about 30 minutes to get the water from a river, and then you just getting water either from a borehole or a shallow well. So all these components then bring in the aspect of we're talking about water being Kenya being a water scarce country. The element that you've brought in, which is very interesting, is using what we have and being efficient, right? So in essence, efficiency means that you use the same quantity of resources that you have to produce more. And that is what we are able to do in Kenya. I've seen a number of projects doing research and looking at different avenues or technology for irrigation. Some technologies that we use end up wasting water. For example, you normally see people just using their hose pipe to try and irrigate their farms, and others then use like a drip lining. That's a more efficient way to irrigate your land. So technology also comes in very well when you talk about irrigation in the farms. So it's not impossible. We also have different avenues where people also encourage kitchen gardening, just for you to get your vegetables.
Very good.
In the farms.
Yeah. Now, and continue with the conversation with Ebenezer Amadi. He's a sustainable, inclusive business manager at KBC, and we are discussing about the food situation in this country. Wycliffe, there has been a lot of talk about sustainable farming and the circular economy farming. Can you help our people understand, first of all, what are these big words and what exactly do they mean?
Thank you, Brian, for that question. It's an interesting discussion that Wycliffe is having with the gentleman in Kisumu. And one of the components that came in very fast in mind when the gentleman was talking about the different initiatives that they are picking up was the circular economy approach. And by circular economy, we basically mean, let me begin from a linear economy model, where you produce a good, you use it, and then you dispose of it. But in circularity, we're looking at you producing a good, using it, reusing it, and then when you get to the point where you can no longer reuse it, you can either refurbish it or recycle the item. So it's basically using, for layman's language, we'll say using waste as input for production and ensuring that you prolong the life of an item or a commodity in the market. In agriculture, we use the same component, but now, for example, when you produce products, you'll be able to use some of the byproducts, for example, as soil amendments. For example, if we use a case of someone who has cattle, so you will use the manure and take it to the farm as an additive for the soil, to improve on your production. You will be able to milk the cow, and when you slaughter the cow for meat, you use the skin to be able to either produce drums, or some time back we used to use the same skin to produce attire. So that's the component of circularity. And you will notice back in the day, from a cow, you'll also be using the hooves. We always make this joke, for example, when you slaughter a goat, kuna ile the soup, right? So where do you think the soup comes from? It's from the boiled it's from the boiled goat, in addition to the bones, right? So that you get yes, out of it. So
and of course you can use horns and hooves to make batons.
Yes. So now that's the component. That's the what we call the circular economy approach or concept, to break it down into the layman's language. So it's a component that we have been using over the years in the farm, in the rural areas, but we moved away from that and started to appreciate convenience. For example, now using single-use plastic, right? And you talked about horns. I used to see people in the village also taking the local what should I call it? The local
brewers.
The local brew, yeah, using the horn as a cup. Yeah. So every component that you have someone will not be quick to throw it or to dispose of it. They will find a use of it. And that's the approach we're calling a circular economy.
That is what you call the circular economy now. It is ensuring that every product, every produce in your farm, is put into a better use.
Yes.
It is put into, it's part of the production.
Yes.
And what about sustainable farming?
Sustainable farming basically just means two things. So we start from defining sustainability. So by sustainability, we mean we have three components where we talk about people, planet, and profit. Some people switch it up and say sustainability. Now, for a farm to be sustainable, then means that you must meet your short-term and long-term obligations, right? For example, buying your inputs, paying the people who help you around. If you've mechanized the farm, then means that you need to be able to maintain the machinery that you have. Now, that's the component of the profit side, because then again, once you're able to reduce on your costs, then your margin also goes up. Now, from the people side, means that you include the people at the bottom of the pyramid within your processes, right? And on the environment side means that any product that you use, you must ensure that it is environmentally friendly. Now, in totality, then we'll call that sustainable farming, because you're looking at your environment, you're looking at your business being a growing concern, and you're also looking at people within your ecosystem.
And so it's a question of the 3 Ps. So as a country, I mean, we have not yet gotten to a point whereby we can say, hooray, we have embraced the circular economy, farming, and of course a sustainable business farming methods. Do you see us getting there anytime soon?
I see us getting there. For starters, when a country wants to transition from a linear to a circular economy, the first point they start with is policy. And I've seen the government also working closely with the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. They're very keen also to revise the policies that exist. People might say, oh no, they're not doing enough. But from my end, I see a half full cup rather than half empty cup. At least there's progress. And I have seen a lot of farmers also adopting the circular economy concepts. You've heard of the black, is it the black soldier flies?
Yeah.
And they use
in the aquaculture.
And they use the larva as feed for chicken. They also use it more or less as soil amendments, as manure in the end, and then
even fish feed.
Even fish feed. So that means that when you start your production at the farm, you'll be using whatever comes from the farm in the next process, right? So you're actually reducing your expenditure on inputs, right? And what that does is it increases your margin, and in eventuality you're also becoming environmentally friendly. So I see us getting there. I have seen also a lot of farms also, including flower farms, trying also to adopt sustainability also by reducing their carbon footprint, right? That's also one element, because greenhouse also then creates global warming, right? And we have also climate change. So all these components then contributes towards sustainability, looking at the environment. So we talk about things in isolation, but I like to bring them to connect them. That's why when you talked about having Kenya not being a food secure country, I touched on water, right, and also touched on climate change. So all these components are interrelated. One area that we should also be keen in is also looking at our water towers, right? Because how then can we improve on Kenya being a water secure country without looking at our water towers? So that's an area we need to focus on. Every time we also keep having conversations with the government, and I've seen the Ministry of Environment and Forestry being keen on increasing the forest cover from what it is now, from 7.6% to
about 10%.
To about 10%, and it also requires resources.
We have also seen, the setting up of an agency to deal with Kenya Water Towers, and I'm talking about Kenya Water Towers Agency.
Yes, so all these are initiatives that the government is also doing. The private sector also comes in play. We have been encouraging companies to adopt the CSR, corporate social responsibility, not as a feel-good kind of approach, but to ensure that they create change and impact to the environment and to the communities that they have. So when I talk about that, we're moving from encouraging corporates from planting trees to growing trees. And you'll realize planting a tree might cost you what an average seedling will be about 100 shillings. Some also go between 30 to 50. And probably the resource it will take you to transport the seedling to the area where you want to plant it. So it could average max, let's say 200 shillings. But growing a tree, one tree will take you about 10,000 Kenya shillings.
Growing one.
That means that you need to take care of the tree, you need to water the tree, remove the weeds, and ensure that it grows.
And feed it with nutrients like manure.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the issues that the government has instituted, and we are talking about the Galana Kulalu food project. If you ask a lot of people, they think that that's a project that's died long time ago. We dusted the coffin and we buried it. But farther from the truth, the first 10,000 model acre farm is almost complete, and the government has employed the latest technology in irrigation, and we are talking about drip irrigation. So if the government is doing it under that model farm, which is 10,000 acres, how comes the private sector has not really come in strongly to embrace sustainable farming methods?
The private sector plays a key role in production in Kenya, O'Brien, and consistently we have been able to encourage them to adopt sustainable farming. And of course, when you talk about the Galana project, there might have been some challenges over the years, and when you're having a pilot, of course, it's also a learning curve. And by pilot, you mean you're starting small. So for a country, that is a small area, but if you look at it from an individual farmer, that's a very big area. So by pilot, you mean you're trying it out, and then you're also learning from the process, and then reach a place where you can upscale, go a bit larger than what is there. But going beyond that, different sectors, subsectors within the agriculture sector have been able to adopt innovations. For example, when you talk about fish farming, where now people are trying to use cages, but still having it in the lake. So what that does is that you're actually reducing on your level of fishing, the small, what people call omena, because to some extent that's why you see the government trying to regulate, and by looking at the size of the net that the fisherman goes to the lake with, because what they're trying to do is to reduce the harvesting of the omena, and give a period for there to be more production of fish in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say that we are slow at it. And I mentioned also the flower farms who are trying also to include sustainable components within the farm.
But you see, for flower farms, I mean, those are multinationals, that are even being prodded from there, from the countries where they are domiciled, to embrace, sustainable farming. But we had to see a situation whereby there's a 360 degrees in terms of dropping our agrarian farming methods and adopting new farming techniques. And you have talked about aquaculture. And the government has developed a concept on aquaculture through the aquaculture business development plan, whereby people are now being encouraged. You don't have to wait for fish from the sea, from the ocean, from the lakes, from the rivers. I mean, you can also do it, from the small farm that you have. So what do we need to do in a way to upscale, the uptake of sustainable farming models in this country?
The basic thing is to look at accessibility. The infrastructure, which is the roads, which is a major factor when you're looking at production costs. That's one thing that needs to be improved. The next thing is the pricing on inputs. So that also determines the price of the products that you have. And that plays a critical role because the forces of demand and supply come into play in the market. Because if you have your produce at a higher price, and someone has a cheap, affordable option, means you will not be able to sell your product. The other component is on reducing of food loss. So by also finding different innovations for storage and better alternatives to help the farmers, you will find that in Kenya we have more small-scale farmers who then do also subsistence farming. In trying to separate the issues, you realize that the three components that I've talked about will help the agriculture sector to improve in production.
Mm-hmm. As we wind up, do you believe that sustainable farming and circular economic farming methods is a way to feed this nation at a time when the country is staring at a serious drought?
So one thing I will mention is that at the moment you will not talk about sustainable farming when people are dying of hunger. The first thing you need to do is to address the issue that currently exists by giving food to the community in the ASAL areas that are dying of hunger. Mm-hmm. So that will be the first thing. The next thing will be to look at how then do we improve on our production and also incorporate some of the innovations that we talked about, for example, the irrigation, and trying to increase access to inputs, and also incentivizing our small scale farmers to produce. There was a time when I was young, I used to see cooperatives which were very active, and you had communities then decide to plant one crop and deliver it deliver it, and then they're able to look at the quality of the product, they package it, and then they sell it. So that gave the farmer the motivation to be able to plant and grow a particular crop, because they knew at the end of the harvesting season, then I will get my returns. So we need to get that back up and the system working in the agriculture sector. And as the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, we're looking at these issues with the agriculture sector network, which is more like an angle looking at the sector boards within the Kenya Private Sector Alliance.
Very good.
Looking at the issues on agriculture.
Amadi, in the interest of time, we have to come to the end of this program. But thank you very much indeed for sharing your knowledge and, of course, the insight with us and, of course, with our farmers.
Thank you so much for having me in your show.
Very good. Ebenezer Amadi is the program manager, that is Sustainable Inclusive Business at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, joining us this morning to help us understand how can we incorporate sustainable farming into our policies to ensure that we become a food secure nation, and of course in the spirit of conservation, in a bit to deal with climate change effect, or what people are calling the Anthropocene. O'Brien Kimani is my name. Thank you for your time. For the last 2 hours, we've been doing this. Always remember, we do this every Thursday right here on KBC Channel 1. Remember, Kurunzi Mashinani is coming up with Suleiman Yeri. Some very interesting conversations he's going to have on that program. Stay right here.